Okay, so just a quick reminder, if you are not muted, if you could just mute yourself, and we'll get on with our day. So welcome to November. It is so hard to believe that we only have a few weeks left in the year. We have 7, including today, there's 7 lunch without lunches left before we break over winter and then rejoin in January. So who are we other than food connoisseurs of strange things? We are innovators. Oh, see, we innovate on food. Doers, dreamers, connectors, and builders. We're all here to lift up, raise up, and build the innovation ecosystem in Alberta. So here's where you can find us. There's our hashtag LWOL is lunch without lunch, and then those are our Twitter handles there. We can also find us on LinkedIn and Facebook. So a couple quick things for today. You can use the raise hand function or just ask to speak by typing your name or comment or question in the chat box, and we'll monitor that throughout the day. Please stay muted until it's your turn to speak. The annotate and poll features that are being shared are totally anonymous. And then we're going to capture the chat at the end and we'll post it in the lunch notes channel on Slack. So for those who may be new with us today or just need a refresher, Slack is our online community where you can connect with other people. We encourage you to use it actively. You get an invitation to the Slack channel when you sign the social contract. So I'll get to that in just a second. Here's our mission and vision. We are a world-class community of dreamers and doers. So by community, it means that we're a collective of people. We're non-hierarchical. We are all capable humans of making progress. And we do that by collaboration, by building that community, and we share stories and build trust. So we do have a foundation at the Rainforest that we talk about, and we talk about the 6 pillars of the innovation ecosystem. And this is going to be my plug again. Bridget dropped the link to the Rainforest scorecard for Calgary in the chat. It is scorecard season, which means we are measuring these 6 pillars, and we are going to give them a score. It is a score out of 1,000, and we are attempting to get to 800. Calgary last year was at 630, and Edmonton I think was like 629. Aaron, if you're on the call, you jump in and remind me, or maybe you are about the same. So we ask different questions underneath all of these pillars to try to get a sense of how you feel about the ecosystem, and we recognize that different people have different perceptions and different experiences in the ecosystem, and that's why we then break it down a little further and look at some of that demographic data to understand how different people are experiencing the ecosystem differently. So once again, the link is in the chat, and I encourage everybody to fill out the scorecard. This is the social contract that I am speaking about. It is a set of 10 values that we ask you to embrace and embody in practice. It is the way that we build trust. It is the way that we build culture, and the way that we move quicker as an ecosystem into supporting and maintaining innovative ventures. So this is the social contract. It's on the website, and when you digitally sign the social contract, you get an invitation to the Slack channel to be part of that ongoing digital dialogue. And just a quick reminder, the rainforest is an analogy. We are wild and untamed. It is not farmed. It's not systematic. There are opportunities for growth partnerships and new relationships happening always. So just keeping that in mind in case you're wondering what the heck a rainforest is doing in the middle of the prairies. So that is that. I haven't read the chat. Thank you, Aaron. Oh, Aaron just dropped down a challenge. Okay, so here's the deal. Every year, both cities average around 100 participants, or like 100 scorecard responses. We would love to be over 100 because that helps us get more breadth and diversity in responses. I would love to see Calgary get close to 200 responses. I think that there are 200 active people in our ecosystem. I think there's more than 200 active people in our ecosystem. Specifically, I am going to say that we need women to answer the scorecard. So if you know a woman working in or doing work in and around the ecosystem, please, please, please. Right now, our percentage is somewhere between 30 and 35 respondents. Oh, Seamus, can you repost the scorecard link? Yes, we can repost the scorecard links. We need Black, Indigenous, and people of color to answer our scorecard. We need people from the LGBTQ plus community to answer the scorecard. And we need, I don't want to say youth, we need young adults, so people between the ages of 18 and 25 to answer our scorecard. Those are our biggest gaps in respondents, and we want to make sure that we're capturing that. When we don't capture that, we deduce that those people are not active members in the ecosystem or don't feel included to participate. And so we have bigger questions to ask ourselves. So thank you, Erin. Females are also underrepresented at 31%. So Erin's throwing the smack down. I think we're going to have to come up with some other sort of challenge for the most participants in the scorecard this year.
Well, how about an ask right now for everybody to open a draft email and send the link on to some of those demographics Courtney spoke of, or just others in the ecosystem that you want to share it with. That would be a really awesome move everyone could do right in the moment.
Yeah, for sure. Good call. So, alrighty. Moving on. So November, we are talking about leadership. And I'm really excited because we have one of my leadership mentors and a person I've leaned on more than one occasion with us today. Some of you may recognize him. Steve is with us today, Steve Armtrong. He also has been around Rainforest from time to time. So he's going to kick us off this week, but we're going to get started by actually doing some breakout rooms and some questions. Gary Gunther, great question. Do the respondents have to be Rainforest members? No, they just need to have an opinion about the tech ecosystem in Calgary or Edmonton. That's it. You just need to have an opinion. So you are all qualified.
Easy enough.
You are all qualified. All right. So we're going to do some breakout rooms first. So I'm actually just going to pull up another presentation for us, just to kind of get us going here. So I just need to share my screen again. All right. Whoa, clicking on the wrong button. Sorry, everybody. So I pulled out this quote. Great leaders don't set out to be a leader. They set out to make a difference. It's never about the role. It's always about the goal. And that felt very rainforesty to me. So I just wanted to throw it out there. We are going to put you into breakout groups of about 4 people. You're going to get about 9 minutes in your breakout group. And so that means everyone gets about 2 minutes. You're going to share with your group a time a leader encouraged you to take a risk. And I want you to share, did it work out? And what was the response from that leader? So if it worked out, did you get praise? If it didn't work out, did they lift you back up and keep you moving? So that is our first question. So share with your group a time a leader encouraged you to take a risk. So you all have a few seconds to think about that while I move you into breakout rooms. So you're going to get 3 to 4 participants per room. You have about 2 minutes. I'm going to keep a timer on the side. So I can pop you in some notes on when you should switch. So here you go. Have fun.
Sorry, I have to move to another. I have to leave the meeting, but if you can put me in a room, please, Carly, would be great. I cannot hear you, sorry.
Do you know what room you were in?
No, I just have to leave before you put in the room because I have to change my computer.
Oh, okay, sure. I'll put you in a room.
Any room is fine. Thank you.
Yep, there you go.
Give me a second to, I didn't actually notice the banner going across the top there.
Oh, sorry. Is this a new room? Are we in a new room? You're on mute.
You're back in the main room.
Okay. Are we
So
supposed to
I'm
be
gonna be bringing everyone back in just a minute.
back? All right. All right.
Yeah, so just hang out for a minute.
Okay.
Mhm. All right, everyone's just coming back, and then we're going to do another breakout room, and then we're gonna do a quick breakout room, and then we're gonna give Stephen a chance to talk. Actually, I'm looking at the time, and what I'm actually thinking is that we're going to do Stephen. I'm thinking we're going to do you first, and then we'll do like an exit through the breakout room. So we'll kind of we'll let you go, we'll give you, so then if people have any Q&A for you, then we'll do that. All right, just making sure everyone's back before we get going. And so, all right. Bridget, are you introducing Stephen? I thought.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just multitasking here.
It's all good. It's all good. It's all good. I'm just making sure so that I'm not like doing it and then you're like, wait, I was gonna do that.
No, so somebody just asked if I could share my ask around the scorecard again. My ask was that you share the link to the scorecard with people via email. If you could, that'd be great. And on to introducing Stephen. So for more than 4 decades, Stephen Armstrong worked around the world as a member of the Canadian Armed Forces and the Red Cross on the literal front lines for many of the globe's most notable humanitarian crises during that time, ranging from the shores of Sri Lanka after the 2004 tsunami to the aftermath of 9/11 in New York to the wildfires in Fort Mac in 2016. Stephen has proven over and over again what true leadership means. Now, as a speaker, consultant, and author of You Can't Lead From Behind, Steve uses humor, honesty, and a lifetime of hard-learned lessons to tell his story and teach others how to become better and more effective leaders. Though his experience is global, his approach is down to earth and genuine, giving you and your leadership team the personalized tools and confidence that they need to succeed. So welcome, Stephen. We're happy to have you.
Thanks, everybody. I'm just going to screen share here. Can you hear me okay? Something weird's happening.
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'm going to cancel that, thinking that hopefully it still works. So thanks for that. I'm not going to bore everybody with my long story. But I am proud. I just turned 60 years old this last few weeks, which is a remarkable feat considering all the times I tried to kill myself or somebody else tried to kill me. I'm so proud to be here. So I do brag about the 60. I'm proud of that. And talking to Courtney about what to speak about, we've talked a lot about, why are people not stepping up within Rainforest as informal leaders? There's a leadership cadre, of course. And are there things that get in the way of people stepping up? And then also what I'm going to talk about is a little bit about how people lead. We don't have a lot of time, but I'm going to touch some time in there and how we can inspire people within the rainforest and the ecosystem to allow them to become leaders in their own right. And I want to start with a story. This is a multicolored fence, represents lots of different things, but there was actually a study done some time ago, probably in the last 10 or 15 years by the American Landscape Architects Society around playgrounds. And what they did was they took kids from a public school, an elementary school, down the street to a playground, and they had, each playground had the similar playground equipment. They all had one teacher with them, but the only difference was in one playground, there was no fence around the outside of the perimeter of the playground. And on the other playground, they had a fence, a chain link fence. And what they noticed after a bit of time was in the unfenced playground, that all of the kids stayed close to the teacher and close to the playground equipment because the lack of fence created no boundaries and some fear and trepidation amongst the kids. But interestingly enough, in the fenced-in playground, the kids naturally spread out throughout the whole piece of property and took advantage of all of the ground that was there and took more advantage of the playground and didn't kind of like a chicken with her chicks gathered all around the teacher, around the legs of the teacher. And the reason I use this analogy in this case is Rainforest has been great at inviting people to take on leadership roles within the organization, but there's not a big connection, I don't think, necessarily with the objectives of the organization and what are the parameters? What does that mean? And so people get a little stuck if there's not good systems around you to, funny, we had a conversation, we're not talking about bureaucracies here, we're talking just about some structure around where people can survive. So I look at the social contract since Courtney and I talked, and Courtney doesn't know this, so I hope she doesn't yell at me when we're off the line. But there's a lot of words here. They're all good words, they're great words. And the pillars of the social contract or the principles behind the social contract are strong words too, but they're ill-defined as far as what do we want to do. Like if I was to step forward, then I want to have a team sport sharing role model role with diversity and offering free help. That doesn't help. So sometimes I wonder if this isn't the rainforest. Everyone's trying to move fast on the spinning wheel. Where we want to go with the rainforest, I think, is the green flag, the starting flag. Allow us to go forward as individuals within the system, and we don't want all of these structures. So what's holding people back? Well, why people don't step up in any organization is, first off, it's fear of making a mistake and looking stupid. And that's generally our own voice in the back of our own head that rattles around at 3 in the morning, say, why did you say something so stupid at that meeting? Or why did you do that? And it's our own worst enemy when we get that voice going. It's not what other people say to us, it's what we say to ourselves. When there is a leadership void and there is things that need doing, we look around the room sometimes and we think, wow, there's ought to be somebody here smarter, better than us, and maybe better educated, better trained to act on that leadership role and take on the task, or is take on the initiative. And fundamentally, human beings are generally very lazy people as animals, and we avoid, like the plague, short-term discomfort, even when it does mean a long-term gain. And these things I'm going to speak to here in a few minutes as we go on. First off is that fear of making a mistake. Well, I've made some dandies. I'm sure I made a mistake some time ago that's probably still costing somebody a lot of money every year just because of what it was. And so I've never had personally, much maybe to chagrin of some old bosses, I never had the fear of making mistakes because I knew my parameters. I knew I was operating within a certain set of, I knew what my task was, I knew what my parameters was, and I knew how to operate within that, and things will go wrong. And we need to learn that when things go wrong, that's okay. Now, I am not a big believer of the term fail fast. I think that's a sloppy term and an excuse. But if you make good decisions with the best knowledge you can have on hand at the time and move things forward, and something goes wrong, that's okay. It's like, okay, how do we fix this? How do we step forward? And the other part of personal mistakes, I think, too, is we look around, especially in Rainforest, we look around some of the current founders and leadership and a number of people in the room, and we think, wow, those guys worked at Microsoft, or they started these high-tech companies and sold that high-tech company, and we're never going to be as good a person or as smart as those people are or seem to be. And this is the one thing I've learned in life is never gauge where you are based on where you see the other person at, because you don't know. We always gauge, well, I'm going to hold myself up against Jim Gibson, which isn't fair. He's had a different career, a different trajectory, a different line. And so we need to get past this fear of measuring ourselves against some of these other people. We always expect someone better to act. And again, it ties back into the conversation we just had. We always think, again, we think that people are out there that are smarter and better, or we look to Courtney, Brittany, Jim, Brad, any of these people that have been around the rainforest, and we think, well, they should be picking it up because they have this leadership role. I use quotations around that. And so we expect them to take the initiative forward. And to be perfectly honest, I've had several conversations within the rainforest where sometimes the suggestion seems to land flat a little bit. And you think, well, okay, maybe it's not for me to move it forward. But what I believe that Courtney and the team at the rainforest want to create is this environment where you need to pick up that ball and start moving it forward. And if you're always waiting for LeBron James to show up and shoot the ball for you, it'll never get forward. So we have to be able to develop some confidence within the organization that the trust is there, that you are good enough to act, and you do have the capacity to move an initiative forward. I think where we look for sometimes within the rainforest is validation that the rainforest wants us to go forward. And really, my understanding and belief of the ecosystem is that we want that the system itself wants the initiative to kind of come out of a few people, gather around, start moving forward. And as long as we operate within the social terms and the guidance of the social contract, it should be okay. And we hopefully shouldn't get yelled at if something goes a little sideways. One of the huge, big, gigantic risks we have as a leader is when we're moving things forward is we need to know that when somebody's taking initiative and somebody's trying really hard, sometimes something's going to go wrong, and we need to accept that and figure it out. Once something's gone wrong, then we can figure it out. And the last piece is the laziness factor that we all have. And that many of us in this call and on Rainforest have been supervisors at time, and we've probably all had the experience where we've had an employee or a team member not performing well, and we just don't even go have that conversation with them. Well, we need to get past that short-term discomfort for long-term gain. And I love this little quote here, where tomorrow is a mystical land where 99% of all human productivity, motivation, and achievement is stored. Well, today is now the time to move it. And if it feels uncomfortable, that's probably a good thing. If it feels super uncomfortable, maybe you should bounce the idea off somebody else within the rainforest to see if this is an initiative that we should be moving forward. And step into that uncomfort. And this whole COVID response there always brings me back to a story. Floyd Powdertail, who is a Nakota elder, told me a long time ago, and he shared the story with me, and he allows me to share it with other people. Is that when the weather turns and blows across the prairies, and when the prairies were all grasslands, and the First Nations were moving around, and the animals and the buffalo were on it, the buffalo would turn into the storm and put its head down and move back towards in the opposite direction into the storm. So the discomfort of the storm was short-lived. And what all the other animals and creatures on the prairie would try to outrun the storm by running ahead of it. And eventually they would exhaust themselves. The storm would overtake them, and many of them would perish or at least be harmed by that. So we as leaders within the rainforest need to learn how to be able to put our heads down, turn into this discomfort, whether it is fear of putting yourself out there, fear of rejection of your idea, whatever it is, and start pushing forward, because we will never move anything forward without it. So I think that one of the, as we kind of move into the next level conversation about the breakout room session, is that we need to make a commitment as members of Rainforest to become leaders of Rainforest. And the whole model is that it's a multi-headed beast. And so we all have to step up. And if we're all waiting around for someone to lead, I don't think we're going to get very far. So we as individuals, and we within our individual groups, we have to make this decision that we're going to step up and take on an initiative and start leading it and pushing it forward. One lesson I learned after 22 years in the Army and a long career with Red Cross was never take no from somebody who can't say yes. And I'll repeat that because it's a simple sentence. Never take no from somebody who can't say yes. So often when we bring up an initiative, both in our lives or in our work or within Rainforest, we hear a no from somebody that has no authority to tell us that we can go ahead or stop it. And we take that and we just check our idea away. So if we really have an initiative, a really good idea that we think is going to help the community, I think it behooves us all to not take no's from those people and start pushing forward till we get to yes. And I would argue that the Rainforest needs and ready members and is ready for our membership to lead more, because I think my perspective is that we have a strong group of people that founded the Rainforest in Alberta and Calgary and now in Edmonton. And those people are moving on in their lives and in their work. And it's a great organization. And I think it requires other people to start stepping up and not to be afraid to leave. Now, the next question is that what does Rainforest need to ready us to lead? And, you know, in conversation with Courtney about this particular presentation is that we need to understand what the parameters are. Where can't we go? Obviously, there's no money to spend, so we're not on budgetary restrictions, and how can we represent the organization if we take on an initiative? And I would say as a group, we need to come to terms with what are the tactical objectives that allow us to start moving towards something. Some of the words that we use within the social contract within the organization are high, lofty, perfectly good words, but they're ill-defined. And if we're looking for an initiative or a task to move forward, sometimes we just need a little more structure around that to allow us to get a handle on what that objective is. So I would say there's two things. The Rainforest is ready for more people to step up as leaders. And I think the Rainforest has to do a little bit of work as an organization to ready itself for other people to step up, because it is too easy to kind of fall back a little bit on the people that are existing in leadership roles. And I hope I didn't come across as too preachy or too a little bit over the top. If you're interested about me, you can go to my website, stephenarmstrong.ca. I'm a really interesting guy. I tell myself that all the time. And you're welcome to reach out to me at any time. What I'm going to do now, I think if you're okay, Courtney and Bridget, I'm going to stop screen sharing. And maybe what we could do is if somebody has a question, we can just try to manage that maybe by typing in the chat box or just unmuting whoever wants to go.
No, so if you have a question for Steve, just type your name in the chat or just say question in the chat. And so then we can get to you. So what we're going to do is we're going to take questions till about 10 to 1, and then we're going to exit through a breakout room with another question for everyone to reflect on the way out. No questions. No questions. So one of the things I wanted to piggyback off of what Steve was saying and around leaders.
I have a question. I'm a slow typist.
Oh. Okay. Yeah, for sure. Go ahead, Brad.
Yeah. Hi, Steve. The
Hey,
question is a couple times you mentioned the phrase kind of move forward, helping Rainforest move forward. And what came to my mind when you said that was, is that enough? Is it enough just to say move forward? Or is it better to have a more clear understanding of what a specific goal is that we're trying to get to?
Yeah, I would argue, yes, the short answer is I agree with the second part of that. I think people need something, first off, we need something lofty to get to, and a visionary is something that we want to move forward. But I think the missing piece in most organizations, and I've seen it in a lot of the companies I work with and a lot of the organizations I've come from, and I see it in Rainforest, is that second level tactical objective that helps you move towards that vision. And you should have a couple, maybe 2 or 3, but not 20. That's over the top. So I'll use an example. When I was with Red Cross, one of our objectives was to reduce personal injury across Canada and around the world. Well, that is like dumb. What it meant was first aid, water safety, swimming lessons. But it was so lofty, nobody understood it. So what we did as a leadership team for Western Canada says, well, we can do that, but how about our interim goal is double first aid sales. And then it allowed people to start to align to that objective by moving resources around a little bit. And people were saying, okay, I'll give up in that setting, I'll give up an FTE for my complement of employees to move towards that objective. And it wasn't like it wasn't a fight anymore. People got behind it. So I think we need, not only do we need this lofty visionary perspective, we need these good solid objectives in the middle to help people. So if somebody comes up and says, well, I think I'd like to do, I don't know what the right example in the Rainforest would be. I'll say there was the pub nights a few years ago at night, given COVID, I get it. But say, okay, the objective is to bring young, bright, smart, diverse people into a room to move the objective forward. And then that allows people, you're not wasting people's time by just throwing parties every Thursday night. Does that help, Brad? Okay, thank you.
For sure. Brent, you had a question.
Yeah, great presentation, Steve. Thanks.
You're very
I guess
welcome,
sort of following on to Brad's point, one of the things I found is not only defining what you are, but what you're not. And I'm kind of curious, like there's Platform Calgary Startup and all these other organizations, and it's like, okay, are we encroaching on their space? Are they encroaching on our space? What are we, right? And one of the things I found is you saying it's like having those, rather than just the lofty words, you're talking a little bit more targeted, like, because I think lots of people would have lots of great ideas, but they're not sure what to do. Is that sort of fair?
Yeah, I would agree. You know, so here's this as an aside, but I think it ties into what you're saying. So one of the things, I was at a meeting, somebody invited me to a meeting with a group of, can't remember what, one of the tech groups anyways in town. And the words they were talking, how do we get the public engaged in this? How do we get people to understand what we're doing? I said, well, I'm just a simple soldier, Red Cross. I'm not a high tech person. Like I get it. But the words that we use sometimes, the ecosystem, what does that mean to somebody who's not understood, like immersed in the language? And I think too, it's like we have all these groups and they're all using this language that is almost disconnected from the average human being, and also doesn't allow them to delineate themselves from rainforest or platform, or I think what was that group? It was like CIT or something like that. Does that make sense? And it sounds like everybody's doing the same thing. But if you use better language, clearer objectives, then people understand, okay, platform doesn't mean you're still not working together, but you all have a place to fill in that objective. I'll go back to a Red Cross example again. Like Red Cross stands on neutrality and stays out of the news. But if we often partner with other groups that we could go out into public and make statements, right? But we did quiet work in the back. They did, I'll say noisy work, that's not fair to them. They were able to be more public in their expression. That's a better way to put it.
All right, so just a couple things. Next week, Al's here with us today. Al is our podcast champion, and he's going to tell his leadership story about the podcast next week as that grassroots community movement, community driven. So I want you to all join us next week on what that looks like. And Al, you need podcast hosts though, don't you? So tell us.
Yeah, for the regular listeners of the podcast, you'll probably notice that Tuesday we launched a broken episode because we didn't have an episode in the queue due to a technical difficulty. Normally we have 3 or 4 episodes in the queue, and if something's wrong with one of them, I can always get another one in there. Unfortunately, we didn't have any option, and so I would say like we have a bunch of hosts in the list, but for, life gets busy and everything, and they just don't always have time. But there's a lot of great people in the rainforest that we would love to hear their stories. And so if you're willing to be a host, with the whole COVID thing, we're using online tools like Zencaster and Zoom and such. So if you have the capacity to spend half an hour to an hour talking with somebody, please volunteer. I'd love to have another queue of 4 or more shows so that we can keep our consistency of a weekly morning, Tuesday morning show. That would be fantastic. And hey, we should be talking to Steve. Steve should be a guest on the show, don't you think?
I agree. All right. So I just want to be mindful of everyone's time. I just want to point out a little comment I got in the chat. I'm not going to name names. And it was, the question was, I got to go back to find it. What would a leadership development program for rainforest look like? It would be a good experience for a lot of innovation entrepreneurs. And my response is, you're right, it would. So you tell me what that looks like. So I think what Steve alluded to at the beginning of this is that Bridget and I are not mother birds. I mean, we are to some extent. We bring you all together here every week, but our job as community managers is actually not to create programming. We didn't create a podcast. Al created a podcast. That Rainforest is not in the business of programming. We are in the business of supporting innovative ideas to support innovative entrepreneurs. So if that is your give to the community, we will help champion it. But we're not going to do it because believe it or not, in the 60 to 70 hours a week that Bridget and I give to Rainforest, we are actually managing a whole bunch of other things, not doing programming. So that's my soapbox for the day. What we're going to do is we're going to leave through breakout rooms. So I am just going to share a screen again.
Courtney, are we going to have time to come back for announcements or no?
We are not going to probably have time to come back for announcements.
Okay, I just want to put this out there right now. I've been thinking about it a lot before we all go out, is that there are so many cool stories that I've heard in the last 2 months from a lot of you in the room, and it would be great if you could share it with everyone else in the room, because especially those of you who are new today, you're probably thinking, who are some of these people and who are the ones speaking and why are they here? I think hearing some of those stories would really help ground everybody to the culture that we're trying to create. So think about that. We might come up with a formal system of how to have someone each week share, but maybe not, but be ready to tell your story. We may just call you out the next lunch without lunch.
If you have
just before we leave, it's Brad. I want to say to Al, I'm going to be a host before the end of November, Al. I'm going to figure out how to do that, and I'm going to shoot you an email to bring more of these stories to life. What you've done, I value so much in our community. So thanks for your leadership, and I am going to be going outside of my comfort zone and becoming a host like my friend Al before the end of November. We'll get an episode in the queue with you, and I'll just props. I love the survey entering into the session today.
There's another one open right now. I hope it stays open while we move into our breakout groups, but there's another survey open right now.
All good. I'll say I recognize it's 5 to the hour. So if you do have another meeting that you do need to jump to or you need to go, this is your kind of like moment to exit. But if you have a few minutes and you want to have some conversation and get to know some people, here is the next thing. So I want you to share an example of a time that you were a leader or in a leadership position and people rallied behind you. And how did it feel to be part of that momentum? So my quick note that I was thinking about is the Black Lives Matter movement, and that if you were to say, like if you were to try to name a leader of a Black Lives Matter movement across the hundreds of countries that have participated, across the hundreds and thousands and millions of people, I actually can't think of a name, because that is the power of a movement. It's the collective. It is the people coming together. And I think that Rainforest has that capacity for us as a group of humans to rally around tech and innovation and for people to pick up things and work collaboratively. So just a thought about that. So I'm going to stop sharing. I will type the question into the chat as soon as we go back in. And so I'm going to find my breakout rooms.
And fill out the scorecard, please.
Oh, and Aaron's dropping the challenge again that he thinks Edmonton can get more responses than Calgary. And I was like, I don't know about that. Thank you for everyone for joining us today. If you are having to depart, we appreciate it. We're going to be talking about leadership all month. We're reporting on the scorecard on the 18th. Please do connect with us. Please do connect with us. And by us, I mean like the community. So breakout rooms, I'm recreating them. Whoops, hold on, going the wrong direction. So you'll have 3 to 4 people per room. If you end up with some, I did recreate them, but if you end up with all the same people, jump back into the main room and I'll reassign you. So have a great one. Thank you, everybody.
We are at 85, Aaron. Come on, Calgary. Let's get to 90. Feels like, what is that called? I've lost my words. You know, TV, what is that called? Like we used to have in Saskatchewan, we used to have what is it called? Like a telethon? Is that the word I'm looking for?
Oh, yeah.
Let's
totally.
hit 90.
Yeah.
Telethon, right? Yeah.
Totally.
Maybe we should host a telethon. Okay, I'll join the breakout room.
Hey, I was the only one in the room. Hi, Courtney. Hi, Courtney. Are you there?